Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So the Game Awards is right around the corner, being December 9th, and well, today they officially unveiled the nominees for the Game Awards. And I think that overall it was a pretty good list, though there was one notable absence here that does have some fans just a little bit upset, so we'll get into all of that here in just a little bit. And then also, if Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5 wasn't quite enough for you Xbox fans, well, they just announced 10 more Xbox Game Pass games for the month of November. And yes, there is some pretty interesting games here, so we'll take a look at that today as well. To get started off, though, we're going to be talking about Xbox's backwards compatibility program, and they really have just done such a phenomenal job with this program over the years. And it really showed yesterday at the Xbox 20th anniversary, where they revealed more than 70 games that will now be available on the Xbox One and the Xbox Series through backwards compatibility. But unfortunately, it does appear that no more Xbox and Xbox 360 games will get backwards compatibility. If you take a look at the official Xbox Wire website, they had this to say: while we continue to stay focused on preserving and enhancing the art form of games, we have reached the limit of our ability to bring new games to the catalog from the past due to licensing, legal, and technical constraints. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. So with that said, I know that some fans out there might be a little disappointed hearing that this will be the last list of games to be getting backwards compatibility. But at the same time, this is understandable, and they also did a really good job at bringing large portions of that original Xbox and then Xbox 360 library over to the Xbox One and now the Xbox Series. And for that matter, this doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the Xbox backwards compatible team, because they can still do other things. As an example, one thing that we have been seeing them do a lot throughout this year is FPS boosted mode. They did just add FPS boosted mode to several backwards compatibility games yesterday, including the Fable franchise and then Gears of War, so we could start to see them implement that feature into more games going forward. And that right there, to an extent, is actually even more exciting to me, because now you can play some of these older games better than they ever played before. So that is something to keep in mind going forward. Next up, we do have some interesting news regarding that Nintendo Switch OLED that released last month on October 8th. Now, it was just confirmed that Nintendo sold 711,000 Switch consoles across the United States, with 314,000 of those being the Nintendo Switch OLED model. As we know, the Nintendo Switch did reclaim that #1 spot for the most sold console in the United States for the month of October. But what's so interesting here is the Nintendo Switch OLED. Leading up to the release for the Switch OLED, this is a console that received a lot of criticism, as there was a lot of fans that just did not believe that the Switch OLED was a big enough upgrade to buy another Switch unit. But that's the thing, because Nintendo's Doug Bowser actually confirmed that many of the Switch OLED units that were sold were actually purchased by those who had already owned a Switch system before. So it does appear that a lot of people did consider this to be a big enough upgrade to purchase another Nintendo Switch console. I myself was actually included in this list, and after playing it, because I put a lot of time into the Nintendo Switch OLED over the last month, and I have to say, it really did pretty much fix every issue that I had with the original Nintendo Switch. I mean, if you play the Switch primarily in handheld mode, the OLED screen does make games look drastically better. It has much improved sound quality, and then also it just feels like a much more premium device this time around. So I do think that this is a meaningful upgrade if you do primarily play your Switch in handheld mode. And well, it does look like a lot of people are doing just that. A lot of people are upgrading the Switch OLED right now, though it will be interesting to see if this persists as time goes on. At the very least, though, the Nintendo Switch OLED model will be a great option for fans looking to buy a Nintendo Switch console. If you do want that more premium version, I would highly recommend the Switch OLED model as opposed to getting the standard Switch for $50 less. I do think that that $50 increase will be very well worth it for new customers looking to buy a Nintendo Switch. Let's go and take a look at the Game of the Year awards here, though, as the nominees was revealed today. And pretty much every year when it comes to the Game of the Year awards, these tend to always bring in just a little bit of controversy, and really 2021 is no different. Of course, there's been a lot of great games that's released this year, but specifically there is one absence here that fans are a little upset about, which we'll kind of get into here in just a moment. First, actually, let's take a look at what the actual nominees were. You have Deathloop, It Takes Two, Metroid Dread, Psychonauts 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and then Resident Evil Village. And actually, that's a really good lineup of games. I genuinely did enjoy all 6 of these games, and I do think that they are very well deserving of getting a nomination in 2021. But that's kind of the thing, because there's a lot of good games that's released in 2021, and there are a few notable absences here, both being from genres that tends to be a little ignored when it comes to the Game Awards for whatever reason. One would be Tales of Arise, and we do often see JRPGs get ignored on lists like this. And then the other one, and this one's probably the more egregious one, would be Forza Horizon 5. Forza Horizon 5 is actually the highest rated game that released this year with a 92 overall score on Metacritic, and then it's also been super popular with tons and tons of fans just absolutely loving this game. I mean, it had like 8 million players in like its first 3 or so days. I mean, it has been crazy to see how fast this game has taken off, and that's just because it's a really, really good game. So to see the Game Awards kind of ignore all of this, it does have some fans scratching their head. And a lot of fans are kind of pointing out that it almost appears like the Game Awards is gatekeeping when it comes to specific genres. And I mean, when you really think about it, it does appear to be the case, because for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to matter how good certain games are. They're just not going to be nominated because they're not in the right genre. It just seems like certain genres such as JRPGs, racing games, fighting games, games like this, it's just really hard for them, no matter how good they are, to get a nomination at the Game Awards. Now, they do have separate awards for those, however, and the good news is that Tales of Arise, Shin Megami Tensei 5, those two were nominated for the Role-Playing Game of the Year, and then, of course, Forza Horizon 5 got nominated for the Racing Game of the Year. With all that said, though, I still think that the list that they put together was actually surprisingly good. I enjoyed all 6 of these games very much, and I was very pleased to see that both Psychonauts 2 and It Takes Two made the list. I was kind of worried that one of these would miss it, but in this case, it looks like both are getting the recognition that they truly deserve. Now, I'm curious to see who wins, though, because I think this is going to be a really tough choice. I think for me, it's going to come down between Psychonauts 2, Metroid Dread, and then It Takes Two. I thought all 3 of these games were absolutely phenomenal. I'd probably go with Psychonauts 2 here myself. That game is insanely creative. It has a good story. The gameplay was phenomenal, and I really do believe it is one of the best collectathon 3D platformers ever made. Hands down. Double Fine blew me away when it comes to Psychonauts 2. But let me know in the comments below on what your game of the year is, and also let me know on what you think about the absence of games like Forza Horizon 5. Do you think it is right to not include certain genres when it comes to the game of the year? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on, though, we do have some new Xbox Game Pass games to talk about for the second half of November, and this is always something that I really enjoy talking about because it just means more great games for everybody. And there are some interesting games in this lineup. If you take a look here, both Dead Space and Dragon Age Origins will be heading over to cloud. Then you have Defear Simulator, Evil Genius 2 World Domination, Exo 1, Fae Tactics, Undungeon, Mortal Shell, My Friend Pedro, and then next Space Rebels. Now, this is one of those lineups that doesn't necessarily have a big AAA game that just immediately stands out, but this is actually quietly a pretty good lineup of games here. One thing that I do really like about Xbox Game Pass is just the wide variety of games, not just the big AAA games, because we do have plenty of those, including Back 4 Blood. We just got Forza Horizon 5 earlier this month, but I also really enjoy seeing some of these smaller hidden gems that might go just a little bit overlooked. These games suddenly get a lot more recognition, and it really has just introduced me to just so many games over the years. And I do think the second half of November does have several games that kind of fits into that category. And right away, you do have Mortal Shell. This is a game that has kind of went under the radar for a lot of fans out there, but Mortal Shell is actually a pretty good game, especially if you like the Soulsborne-like genre. Now, I do know that there's a lot of Souls-like games out there, but really only a few really stands out. You have games such as Neo and then Remnant, but then there's also Mortal Shell. They do seem to understand that Souls-like genre, and if you do like the Soulsborne games, you might want to check out Mortal Shell. I think this is a great entry for Xbox Game Pass and fans that have missed this game thus far. Another game here, though, would be Fate Tactics. This is a tactical RPG, and it does seem to be a very well-received game. I checked this game out on Steam earlier, and 86% of fans did recommend Fate Tactics, and a lot of people were kind of comparing it to Final Fantasy Tactics. Now, Final Fantasy Tactics is a beloved game for a very good reason, so anytime you get compared to Final Fantasy Tactics, that's a pretty good overall thing. And truthfully, we don't really get a lot of good tactical RPGs anymore, so if you are a fan of this genre, you might want to check out Fate Tactics on Xbox Game Pass. This is actually one of the premier reasons that I love Xbox Game Pass so much, because I actually, up until this point, had never even heard about this game, and well, now I'm actually quite interested, so I will check this one out when I get the chance. Of course, you also have other games here, though, including My Friend Pedro, which is actually a returning entry for Xbox Game Pass. I mean, first off, My Friend Pedro is an insanely fun game, but anytime you see a game return to Xbox Game Pass, that means that they probably had some success there. There's always been that controversy about how successful games can be in Xbox Game Pass, but I think when you see things like this, yeah, that's a pretty good sign right there. But definitely check out My Friend Pedro. It's a very, very fun arcade game. And then last but not least, I have to give a little nod to Evil Genius 2. Evil Genius 2 is actually a day one release for a satirical spy-fi lair builder where you are the criminal mastermind. We actually had heard about this game earlier this year, and in the comments, I know several of you all were pretty excited about this one, so there you have it. Evil Genius 2 will be releasing directly into Xbox Game Pass on November 30th. But yeah, you Xbox Game Pass subscribers have some more games to check out throughout the rest of November, and this is in addition to games like Forza Horizon 5, which released just last week, and then you also have Halo Infinite single player releasing next month, and then of course you also have Halo Infinite's multiplayer out right now, or at least the beta. Yeah, you Xbox fans out there, you have a lot to play in the next couple of months, it appears. Now, one last thing that we're going to talk about real quick here would be a new Dragon Ball game that was kind of announced out of nowhere, and this one is a little bit different than you might be expecting. Typically, when it comes to Dragon Ball games, they are fighting style games, or in some cases, you might have an RPG. But here they announced Dragon Ball The Breakers, which is completely different than anything that they've ever done before. Now, I'm not going to include gameplay footage because Bandai Namco, they do have a tendency of copywriting that type of stuff, but this game basically is Dead by Daylight set in the Dragon Ball world. Yeah, this is an asymmetrical multiplayer style game where several people will play as some of the weaker characters in the Dragon Ball universe, and they hide and run away from some of the most villainous characters such as Cell, Majin Buu, and Frieza. It all sounds really bizarre on paper, but it actually could turn out to be a pretty fun game. Dead by Daylight, of course, is a lot of fun, so I mean, I guess we'll kind of see what happens here with Dragon Ball The Breakers. If you are interested in this game, though, it will release on pretty much all platforms, being the Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PlayStation 4, and PC sometime in 2022. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, what is your game of the year so far? And really, I couldn't include every game that I wanted to on this list, as YouTube only allows me 5 poll options. But out of the ones that I included here, 56% of you voted for Forza Horizon 5, 9% of you voted for Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, 15% Psychonauts 2, 3% Deathloop, and then 16% being Other. Now, I do want to apologize for not including Metroid Dread on one of the main options here. I actually thought I did and didn't even realize I did it until later on in the day. But regardless, a lot of you all did vote for Metroid Dread in the Other comment, and I really do think that that is a phenomenal game. It's probably my second favorite game of this year, I would say right now. I would still go with Psychonauts 2, but yeah, I think that Forza Horizon 5 getting 56% of the votes right here is kind of telling on your all's thoughts about the Game Awards and them not including that as one of the nominations. Yeah, like I said before, Forza Horizon 5, it is the highest rated game of the year, and it does seem like fans are absolutely loving this game right now, as the results here clearly shows. What I will say, though, is that I think that 2021 has been a really good year for games. I think there's been a lot of good games, regardless of what platform you prefer to play on. I think Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation all did a great job this year at releasing good games. And I mean, everybody kind of has their own favorite game, and it doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. But one thing that I think we can all kind of agree on is that there's been a lot of good games to release in 2021, and that's just good for the entire game community. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.